The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Broadcasters Podcast, where we dive deep into the media industry headlines and dissect the digital disruption that diverges the masses into the new media counterculture and away from the media establishment. Here is the King of Podcasts.
Here we are, episode 240 of the Broadcasters Podcast. We're going to talk about the CW here on the program because it's the ongoing story of this network that has gone through so much. I'll tell you, if you haven't had a chance to watch, I would recommend, if you want to get the backstory of the CW from its inception all the way to current day, to where the CW is now what was owned by Viacom and where things were with that, I would tell you there's a YouTuber named Connor Higgins that did an excellent job doing a multi-part series on the history of the CW. I actually want to go back and watch that again because it was so interesting on what they did with the lineup, what they're doing with the programming, and how the UPN network, the United Paramount Network, the Warner Brothers TV network, the WB, those two channels combining, and then all the things that happened with CW after all this. When it comes to the CW, I never really watched anything more than one show on that channel, Riverdale. And I was like the first 4 seasons, because the one they changed where they got older and it was like 5 years ahead, no, I'm not interested. If they're not in school, I'm not interested. It's kind of like, the same idea with 90210. I don't need to see these kids growing up. I like them in high school. The way the comics were set with, all the mystery stuff, like almost like a Scooby-Doo kind of feel to it. That show was fun for a good couple of seasons, and I enjoyed it. But after that, I'm not watching anymore. I'm done with that. Now, with that said, we know that CW has also been synonymous with a number of shows in the DC Universe, with The Flash, Legends of Tomorrow, Arrow, among other things. But now, the CW, in a time when network television is just so irrelevant, and linear TV is like a dime a dozen. I mean, some channels, when you look at local TV, they're just trying to make sure they're up on any type of service besides the rabbit ears. They want to make sure you can be seen, you can see their channel and their content on YouTube, Amazon, Roku, whatever. Like, find a way to keep people to watch your channel. And then there's all these sub channels for all these as well. When you look at Bounce or Get TV or, Me TV and all these other channels, right? That's all of that. And they're all from other set networks that might have some cable clearance or they don't. So what happens is that you luck out if you're watching streaming and you have like a direct TV stream or something like that, where you have your local channels and then your smart TV will take, channel 1000 up, and then you can watch whatever channels that are available on that. And you don't have to worry about a box anymore. But not everyone's there yet. There's so many people that still have a cable box, but that pendulum has swung to the other side. We're going to talk about that too, where streaming viewership has surpassed cable TV tune-in for the first time ever. And that's from Nielsen putting out that information. We're going to talk about that, but right now we're going to go through the CW and all the things that are going on with that. What does this mean to the other networks? And then we'll talk about streaming when it comes to HBO Max, because there's layoffs, there's programming being taken off the streamer, and so much more of that. Then I also got to talk about streaming services raising prices, introducing advertising now that subscriber growth has slowed. What's next? Do we get the bundling like we've talked about for the last 2 years? And then we'll get into some radio stuff, some music stuff, and all that coming up here on the program. Thanks for listening in. Thanks for subscribing. Make sure that a couple things. Number one, if you want to go ahead and reach out to me and you want to make comments for the program, something you want me to read back, 2 ways to do that. You can go to broadcasterspodcast.com, go down to the bottom of any page. You'll see a contact form where you can just fill that out and I will read what happens back on the air. Or you can go to the YouTube feed while you're watching the show. If you're listening to it and watching it on the YouTube, youtube.com/JBRASCO951, then just leave comments there. Please do. And one of the things I'll tell you that I put a Depraved and Debaucherous episode this week. That's my other companion series. That's all on, society and culture and psychology and, dating and relationships and all this good stuff. I put a story out about Doja Cat and the whole deal with her deciding to shave her head bald. and the flack that came with that decision and everything that goes on with it. That's a pretty interesting story. It got some traction, but I'd also recommend that if you want to check that out for yourselves. In the meantime, let's talk about the CW. Let's get into that real quick. It's Nexstar Television Network that now, or Nexstar Media Group that now runs the CW. They will be running it, and the deal will be closing soon. They plan to make the network profitable by 2025. Their approach, just like a good old corporate giant, broader and cheaper programming. And that's the plan. So the 75% ownership stake in the network with previous 50-50 owners, Paramount Global and Warner Brothers Discovery, each retaining 12.5%. So Paramount Global and Warner Brothers Discovery will still have a small piece of ownership in the company, but 75%, the majority, will be now through Nexstar Media Group, intending to turn it into a more broad audience and cost-conscious broadcast network. It will not be for younger audiences, will not be for diverse audiences anymore. They want to put it for everybody. I almost feel like it's going to be like an Ion Television, the way it sounds. Executives had a 15-minute conference call with Wall Street analysts, and they had prepared remarks, no Q&A period. Nexstar CEO Perry Sook reaffirmed the rationale for the deal, that the company will absorb the CW's debt but not pay any cash or stock up front. And their CFO, Leanne Gliha, says they're going to try to make the channel profitable by 2025. So here's what they're talking about here. She says it's no secret that the CW is not profitable, but this is not typical for fully distributed broadcast or cable networks. No other network like this operates at an ongoing loss. So they're going to significantly reduce expenses, and that the amount they're paying for this is a proxy for a purchase price or an investment made over time, rather than an ongoing drag on cash flow. Nexstar is treating this like an equity partner. They're almost doing like a venture equity type of feel to it. Yeah, it's like radio. It's private equity, basically. It's kind of feeling like that right now. So they're going to be like vultures. They'll take some intellectual property and they'll do something with it and sell it off. And then they'll just tamper down all the different programming that they have that's scheduled and scripted to be put together. The Nexstar president and COO, Tom Carter, said Paramount and WBD will continue to produce scripted originals for the network. The arrangement will be primarily for this coming season, 2022-2023, and the Nexstar will have the option to extend the partnership. So they have a place where they're still going to have programming, and CW will continue to be as it is for one more season, one more broadcast season. And then we'll figure out what they do in May or June, summer next year. They want to develop programming without a dual agenda of greenlighting programming with potential to cross over to streaming video on demand. And the demographic focus is going to change over time. So shows like Riverdale, All American, Arrow, Supernatural have focused on viewers in their teens through their 30s. But then there's a problem where this is the part that really got people all worked up, is that the CW's average audience, their average viewer, is 58 years old. That's like older than Fox News and CNN and MSNBC, all those political channels, okay? So the company did say that they were going to renew all current shows, but not any new ones being added to the mix. One of the things they also say there's a big cost-cutting thing they need to do is that CW spends almost twice as much as the networks on what broadcast networks do about programming. And it's a disparity that Nexstar plans to eliminate. They say they're going to take a different approach to CW's programming strategy, leveraging the experience and spending approximately $2 billion a year on programming, attracting and monetizing viewers, and transitioning what is one of the channels they own, WGN America, is now being transitioned to News Nation, their national cable news network, which I don't know anybody that really watches that, but it's there. It's on cable. And they're going to have a strict focus on cash flow. They didn't offer specifics on cost savings or staff reductions, but that's going to happen. It's corporate. Areas like corporate overhead, digital infrastructure, advertising, sales, and content and programming acquisition would have potential for meaningful expense reductions. So yeah, the corporate thing to do, you want to go ahead and cut off as much as you can, micromanage, and then just make the most out of the limited staff and resources that you're going to leave yourself with. Now, let's go ahead and focus on that part of the CW viewer being 58 years old. Okay, so if me being in my 40s watching Riverdale, okay, and you're telling me that I'm watching the show and, you know, I'm not even part of the audience. You know, it's like part of the thing is that they are using younger actors and actresses for the programming, but the stories can go for different ages altogether. Like they're not creating, from what I'm hearing, okay, All American, Arrow, Flash, Riverdale. Remember, they're all based on intellectual properties of content that goes back decades. So you can have somebody that might be a grandfather or grandmother watching this channel, which they pretty much have, because of the fact that it's DC-based stuff, that's comic-based stuff that you might have some audience that might watch. And Riverdale is based on the Archie comics that go back to the 60s. So that's the idea here. And all they did with some of these shows is they decided to repurpose some of this content for a new generation, rehash basically. But they did do something to give it a new spin, a new twist. There were a lot of memes that talked about CW viewers being 58 years old on average. One person named Cassie, who's a verified Twitter user, says that, quote, finding the average age of a CW viewer at 58 years old is the best thing that could have happened to me. Maybe it's that when you're 58, you finally have time to watch TV. Time to sit back, crack a White Claw, and live vicariously through fake teens doing shit you always heard teens did. Pretty funny. And then somebody writes here, Matt Sibley on Twitter talks about, and he's doing the Jay Leno like monologue here, so I can hear Jay Leno doing this. You hear this? You hear about this? Apparently, the average age of a CW viewer is 58 years old. 58 years old. Now, I know you're thinking, that's absurd, but just think about how long Supernatural was on for. That's my Jay Leno impression. There we go. And then you look and you say, okay, younger viewers tend to stream CW programming and not watch a day and date on their living room Samsung TVs. And the president and COO is saying that they're obviously going to try to work on making that age demographic much younger. However, they're going to do that. So the CW network goes back to the 2006-2007 television season, originally a joint venture between CBS Corporation, owners of the UPN, and Warner Brothers, majority owner of the WB. And the C&W were named after CBS and Warner Brothers. And it was a mixture of programming from both UPN and the WB networks, which ceased independent operations September 15th and September 17th, respectively, of 2006. And the original plan of the programming on the CW was to appeal to women 18 to 34 years old. They failed, obviously. In trade magazines, the CW was referred to as the Green Network because the logos of the campaign are in green, referencing it to be the newest broadcast network in terms of finding its footing. But they had a lot of problems from the get-go in the first couple of years of their existence. The network always struggled in the Nielsen ratings. Nothing ever really went and cracked like even the top 50, I think, of shows. There was a downturn by the Writers Guild strike of 2007-2008. And even back then, there was speculation that the structure of financial statement of limited liability companies could face a possible disbandment if its ratings did not improve. They were always working on a deficit. They never had a full ownership or a lot of money behind them really invested. They might have had some companies that had a lot of money behind them, but they had the projects going on. Like, I'll never understand why the UPN or WB or CW channels ever really existed. Like today, I don't understand why there is a need for this kind of channel now. But anyway, we know that the the channels for WB and UPN go back to 1995 in January. And there was a lot that went on with these networks that you can go on. And like I said, Connor Higgins, look him up on YouTube and follow the story. It's incredible. And when you think about the new CW and what they did one of the shows that really stood out, or two of the shows that really stood out for them was America's Next Top Model and WWF's SmackDown, or WWE SmackDown. Watching the new seasons with full night premieres. And America's Next Top Model and SmackDown did really well and actually did good on ratings. And some of their other things that they had that really did well for them was, say, Veronica Mars. But a whole lot changed for them anyway, and they just always struggled in general. And I'll never know what the whole deal was that really made people interested in that channel in the first place, but it is what it is. But the one thing I haven't heard about yet, which would be interesting, is would any of these existing shows go somewhere else? Because I don't know if anybody's really talked about that yet. Because you think about, people are really into some of the shows that CW was putting together. You had Legends of Tomorrow, Batwoman, and Charmed. Could those ever get reestablished to another streaming service? Like, it's really simple for any of these CW audiences to go ahead and move over to streaming when some of the programming already was being streamed, whether it was on CW or somewhere else. Like, I remember the one thing they talked about was there was a deal that CW had where their programming would be available on Netflix 8 days later. So, like, when Riverdale was on as it was, I got to watch it on Netflix. I didn't worry about watching it anywhere else. Because the fourth season I did watch on Netflix. Because then you also had Batwoman, Naomi, Legends of Tomorrow, Legacies and Charmed, Flash and Stargirl, Superman and Lois. They had a lot of different projects, but now this is what happens to be where if the DC Universe is going to be done anything with of that programming, that's Warner Brothers Discovery. So what are you going to do with those shows? Are those going to move over to HBO Max or the newly merged HBO Discovery, whatever that name's going to be down the line? Because you could do that. And that could encompass some of the program that they have. But the other problem is that this is also where Warner Brothers Discovery might not be taking any of these shows on to move them over because they're scripted and they've been cutting a lot of scripted programming, which we'll talk about that. But that's what they've been doing lately, and it doesn't matter anymore to them. It doesn't really make a difference. Now, bleedingcool.com takes a step further and then says, well, let's talk about the rest of the networks out there based on the CW sale. Now, after they go through their part of the story that I just mentioned before, they go into an op-ed. So he asks here, this bleedingcool.com article from Ray Fluke, he asks, what will be left when the dust settles? Working under the assumption that it keeps its name, which it probably won't, the CW will be a network that's a combination of reality and reality competition shows and more family-friendly and middle American programming. So no more Riverdale, The Flash, or the originals. Think more Tim Allen and Last Man Standing. And that the rumblings that Nexstar's more and more right-leaning cable news channel News Nation will be integrated more into the network's revised daily programming plans. And a very good argument can be made that the broadcasting landscape, well, they're talking political here. I'm not going to worry about that. And they're saying, will it work? He says yes, because Nexstar will market the CW as being family-friendly, flag-saluting alternative to all that radical stuff going on over at ABC, NBC, CBS, and Fox. I don't know about that. Does that even make a difference anymore? What your political slant is or what kind of content there is? Ion programming already does that, and there's already other channels that do the same thing. This is the CW where it has clearance on all these other channels that are out there that you'll catch on, your rabbit ears. Over-the-air television. Like, an older audience is going to be there anyway. And how many people are watching on cable and might be watching through somewhere else? Because if they're not going to be putting out new programming that might be stream-worthy, then they're not going to go after a younger audience. Let's just be honest about it. The reality stuff, they might be able to get somebody younger, but I don't know if that's going to be something they're going to get either. There's enough programming out there for them to go ahead and not go after the same programming that's out there. Listen, for Ion Television, they do a good job of taking all the CBS shows. So Blue Bloods and Hawaii Five-0 and Law and Order SVU they take from NBC, or they'll take Law and Order Criminal Intent, or they'll take, Without a Trace and things like that. And they'll just run those all day long. And it works for them. And they're able to make a nice little profit. So all they're doing is just running repeats of all these shows that are just binge-worthy. and it goes for an older audience, and it works. And there are other channels that do the same thing all across the rabbit ears, so it doesn't make a difference here. What they're talking about is they're going to create some right-wing, redneck, kind of whatever. Come on. This guy has a political slant to it. Fine. You wanted to put that out there? Good for you. But it doesn't make a difference to me. It's like, all right. That's the assumption of this writer. And that's what he thinks is going to actually happen. I don't think it's going to go like that. What I do think is maybe there's a couple of shows that could get picked up, but then again, maybe they've just been already around long enough. They'll just get repurposed to another channel or streaming somewhere else, but their production will end and cease. That could very well much happen. To Riverdale's kind of like run its course. Supernatural has been around for a long time. The Flash, you already have the deal with Ezra Miller and all that's going on there, so just because of that, they might not even worry about recasting or whatever they can do with that. All the issues there. Not so much about Ezra Miller in the movie, but just like the Flash series, maybe they're just not going to continue going forward. And there were other shows that have come and gone on that channel too. But that's what they're going to do. Now, this writer does get very political in his article, which I don't know why he does that, but okay. Fox is considered the network of random extremes. They do a lot of, reality competition shows. Network makes hits out of Lego blocks, Domino's, and Gordon Ramsay. ABC is whatever Disney will want it to be. CBS honestly needs the least amount of changes because the network has been laser focused on an older demo for years now. Familiar franchises, expanded franchise universes, and higher quality reality programming has served well and will continue to. And NBC, will the Peacock go back to the kind of network that brought Hannibal into the world? It could be, and it doesn't even have to go that dark to make it like that again. But they're saying there's a sizable demo out there that feels too cool for broadcast, but doesn't want to be doing any serious deep dives into streaming, and NBC could step up to fill the void by being the cooler alternative. It doesn't make sense what he's saying right there, but that's what he feels like could happen. But anyway, there's a whole lot more that can be read about when it comes to the programming and what the future is of it and all this good stuff, which it doesn't make much of a difference anymore. It's here, it's gone, and nobody's really caring about it. Let's talk about HBO Max. We mentioned the fact that they're removing 36 titles, including 20 original series from their streaming service. Let's run into those real quick. So some of the shows they've already dropped off are HBO shows and several Warner Brothers films, including Camping, Vinyl, Mrs. Fletcher, and Run. There's 20 original HBO Max shows that will be taken off the platform, including teen drama Generation, animated anthology series Infinity Train, the holiday-themed reality dating show The 12 Dates of Christmas, and the Not Too Late Show with Elmo, a Sesame Street spinoff. And there's a lot more they're taking off. A lot. There's that. They decided to just go ahead and just chop away. So streaming is having their own issues with content because of Warner Brothers Discovery, the raising prices now, which we'll talk about that in a moment. But one of the things that can be said is that streaming is now the end-all be-all of what people are going to be watching going forward. The pendulum has swung. Nielsen has reported this week that streaming viewership has surpassed cable TV the first time ever. And so they say that in their streaming and total TV snapshot called The Gauge for July 2022, streaming accounted for 34.8% of all viewing, and that share of the total rose 23% compared to July 2021. So in 1 year, there's just a major change. Cable took 34.4% of the total, down 9% from last year. Broadcasting slumping 10%, accounting for 21% of all those tuning in. And so what you're looking at is broadcasting now 10% of the audience out there of everybody watching television. People 2 years and older. They're watching more streaming than they're watching cable TV or anything behind a box or a pair of rabbit ears. They'd rather watch it through the internet. One factor in July was the end of the NBA playoffs, pulling significant numbers for TNT and ESPN in June. The Tokyo Olympics boosted cable in 2021 of July, and streaming in 2022 benefited from the blockbuster premiere of the final 2 episodes of Stranger Things Season 4, among other draws. So among the streamers, the top streamers out there, besides 10% that goes to other streaming services that are not the named streaming services, 8% of that 34.8% streaming pot goes to Netflix, 7.3% goes to YouTube and YouTube TV, 3.6% goes to Hulu, 3% goes to Prime Video, 1.8% goes to Disney Plus, and 1% goes to HBO Max. So Netflix still is the end-all be-all. YouTube and YouTube TV is second, Hulu third, Prime Video fourth, Disney Plus fifth, HBO Max sixth. By the way, Peacock not even mentioned standalone on this Gauge snapshot. This is a dead time for programming because there's not any live events going on in terms of any live concert series or award shows or things like that. The live event series, right? Those one-night things. And the sports is very dead right now because it's all baseball. And like they said, without the Olympics, without any particular, like, say, the World Cup, because the World Cup runs later this year, or any other significant sports like football or basketball, there's nothing like that now. But of course, when football and basketball start ramping back up, next month, football will be back up. And then by October, we're back up with that basketball again. Things will change altogether. And that'll be pretty much where it is. But that's a significant story that's coming out now. That has to be considered. Tell you what. And so with streaming now taking up on a regular basis, not all the time, but is now been neck and neck with cable for who has the biggest amount of viewers out there or consumers watching. Streaming is starting to look a lot like cable TV. Bloomberg talks about that, and they're raising prices, introducing advertising now that their subscriber growth has slowed. Lucas Shaw writes about this, and he says that it was only a few years ago that streaming pitched itself as the consumer-friendly alternative to the cable bundle, but these are corporations we're talking about, folks. You should have known this was all going to change and that you were going to get priced out. All this wonderful heyday of the Wild West of streaming being pretty cheap and easy to get and so much content out there that you can go crazy. Well, it's not there anymore. But the recent changes feel like they're being geared towards a different audience for Wall Street. Yeah. So once they got you locked in, now they're going to make it, can you cut yourself away from the streaming? Can you justify not having to pay that $10 a month or $20 a month in some cases for Netflix? Are you willing to go ahead and forego yourself and cutting out that subscription? So the disruptor is streaming has ended up copying ideas from cable. For all the innovation that Netflix brought to Hollywood, it's still making TV shows and movies in the same general manner as everyone else, and nothing, not even a monopoly, grows forever. The biggest difference between cable and streaming, at least for now, is that most streaming services aren't profitable. They haven't figured that out yet. Those are 3 to 5 year plans for those streaming services to make up the losses they're getting from the lack of network and cable revenue and viewership. Companies spent billions of dollars to chase subscribers, believing Wall Street would give them a break on profitability. It did until it didn't. And now Netflix is far and away the most profitable streaming service. The company spending years preaching a growth story and skeptics would say would run out of money. Now it's the company that wants investors to look at their bottom line. It's not the most profitable, of course. That would be Disney or Google or Apple, depending on your definition of media. After the latest cycle of corporate earnings, the biggest media and tech companies in the U.S., they're looking at number one, streaming services aren't growing in the U.S. anymore. So what we're getting is we're not getting a growth in streaming as we're getting a majority of viewers streaming as opposed to cable. So Netflix has been losing customers. Disney added about 100,000 customers. But their audience is still 75 million for Netflix, 45 million for Disney Plus. HBO had a smaller section of the audience before they got bought out, but its owners started spending more on streaming because it wanted HBO Max to be as mass market as Netflix, Warner Brothers, until they sold. So prices are going up, ads are coming in. And what do you do when your growth is in your most lucrative market slows? You raise prices or find a second source of revenue. So now the ad-supported tiers are coming. Disney raising prices for almost every major plan. Advertising supported service set up for December. Warner Brothers Discovery that their combined service will cost more, and they will have 3 tiers, including ad-supported. Netflix and Amazon have been raising prices for a year. Both are investing a lot more money into ad-supported video. Paramount Plus and Peacock don't have pricing power, but they do have ads. Apple TV Plus may have ads soon as well. So you're going to have to deal with that anyway. You're either going to get the advertising or you're going to have to spend a good amount on streaming. Now, they put out the pricing. If you took the top 7 streamers right now, okay, if you wanted to watch every major streaming service without advertisements, Bloomberg makes this point here, it would cost you $100. That's more than basic cable right now. Because basic cable, I think, is around $80, $90 now. And if you have everything together, it might cost you $250, $300. $9 for Amazon Prime, $5 for Apple TV Plus, $5 for Discovery Plus, $20 for the ad-free Disney Plus bundle. That would include Hulu and ESPN Plus. HBO Max is now $15. Netflix $15.49. That's for the one user at a time HT. That's not counting the 4K model with multiple users. Paramount Plus $10. Peacock to be ad-free $10. That's what they're talking about. Because now they still need to find a way to get more viewers. That's what the problem is. But now what we're going to have is some live sports is going to be exclusive. Specifically, NFL now, your Thursday night games only on Amazon. The number of people paying for TV is going down. They aren't watching less video. They're just watching more video online. Now, the other thing, too, is if streaming is going to start stealing business ideas from cable, it might as well go all the way and bundle services together, which I said a couple of years ago that's going to happen. You could pay $35 or $40 a month for Netflix, HBO, and the Disney services. Would you ever cancel? Probably not. And most of these companies aren't ready to do that. They want to own the customer relationship. They don't want to add enough customers. They won't add enough customers to offset the price cut that is built into a bundle. Amazon and Apple already offer programming for other streaming services within their video services, and now YouTube is reportedly trying to do the same. And no one's been able to convince Netflix or Disney to participate in one of these programs. So this is part of the thing they have right now. And who knows what they're going to do about it. I think part of the thing, too, is that you're going to have a lot of programming that'll be on streaming that'll be sports related. For instance, now you have rights fees to the point of $1 billion for the Big Ten that just got signed up with Fox, CBS, and NBC splitting the rights to where they're going to have some of that coverage on their respective channels streaming and not at a premium. It'll just be available. That might be the idea going down the line. And you wonder why they think they can be able to do that. Well, there's a study that came out that explains that people are already used to watching on ad-filled platforms anyway, and they're used to it. Business Worldwide reports on this, and they talk about this new study that comes out that reports that customers in the U.S. spend nearly 60% of their leisure time on platforms with advertising. 50% of Americans are already satisfied with the amount of ads they're exposed to. When it comes to podcasting, when it comes to YouTube, unless you're willing to spend that $10 a month on the YouTube to get the ads out, it doesn't make much of a difference. Luminate's latest Entertainment 365 report. They gathered data from 4,004 individuals, ages 13 and up, from March 16th to April 11th. And the report found that an ad-free experience is not the primary driver for premium subscriptions, but getting a good value for the price and enjoying a range of content to consume. Number 1 was listening to music or watching TV. Number 2, using social media. 3, watching movies. They looked at Generation Z, the younger audience. Music captures the highest rate of diehard fans, especially among Gen Z with 80%, and Gen Z music listeners expressing diehard fanship. They found in this demographic, 50% are more likely to live stream music events compared to the general population, 33% more likely to go to live in-person music events. So they would actually sit home instead of going out. No surprise there. Gen Z, 75% more likely to use than the average consumer to use game consoles for entertainment. So they can get to their entertainment favorites in one spot. So their Xbox or their PlayStation, that's what they want to use. Gen Z is 34% more likely to be familiar with NFTs, cryptocurrency, and or music royalties. 50% or more of Gen Zs and millennials are planning to invest in them in the next 3 months. And there's a lot more to that can be talked about. But there you go. 60% don't mind the ads just sprouting around on whatever they're watching. I got a couple of radio stories I want to take real quick before we wrap things up. The show will be a little bit short tonight. There's only so much, and honestly, I didn't get one of those really juicy stories to really get something out there to talk about, much like the Warner Brothers Discovery part or Batgirl. Like CW, what much can I say about it? It's a network. I'm not really too excited about saying anything about it. There's just not much to say. Now, Fred Jacobs, who I like to go and quote from quite a bit, did put a story out about radio that did interest me about the people that are in it, the talent that they have, and if they're being properly trained and consulted and being built to become entertainers, not just in radio, but the traditional form where a lot of people in entertainment, your master of ceremonies, came from radio. And the radio backgrounds they might have. When I think about it today, I think of Ryan Seacrest. I think of Carson Daly. I think of Steve Harvey, for that matter. All having radio backgrounds, some way, somehow. So he went to the Michigan Association's Broadcasters Conference in Northern Michigan, and he wanted to find out where young people are always interested in hearing how veteran broadcasters got into radio. And he mentions here, Fred Jacobs, talk to 10 broadcasters, and you might hear a dozen stories of how they climbed the ladder of success to get to where they are today. And for some who have experienced failure but managed to get back on their feet, you'll hear multiple stories of managing their comebacks. Always makes me think about the story that I did with Dave Pratt and his career all the way up for 30 years in rock radio and being able to go into podcasting after that, but really just did an amazing job with his work. Now, he writes here that while veteran broadcasters are all too aware that it takes more than chance or even charm to get ahead in radio, good luck at various stages of your career game can provide make or break rises or falls. And the longer you've been at it, the more you can pinpoint those moments when a stroke of good or even great fortune came along just when it was needed most. Right place, right time. Now, he also talked about going to a morning show boot camp in Chicago, which is the boot camp is a training thing for morning show hosts and for radio talent that's done by large consultants and things like that to really train and teach people on how to just do radio in a very crash course type environment. So they talked about commercial radio talent in the U.S. And in their study, they talked to 750 respondents, better defining the state of radio from the air talent point of view and tracking questions from past years. And with an introduction to new questions, the state of play in 2022 is like this. That talent may always aspire to bigger markets, bigger day parts, and more money. Bigger day parts, that means like saying you're working the overnight shift or you're working at nighttime and you want to be on middle of the afternoon on the way home to work, afternoon drive they call it, or morning drive on the way into work. Those are the parts that you want to be a part of, especially morning show. That's where the most money is. Advertising and for contracts. But there's also the thought that many feel like they're just simply cogs in the radio wheel, wearing even more hats and feeling taken for granted. A majority have no idea or can only hope they are part of the organization's long-term future or believe they're not part of the picture. 4 in 10 say they are, playing a key role in their company's future plans, especially for those for the smallest companies or mom-and-pop operations. But inside radio's biggest companies, they're least likely to feel they're integral to the organization's destiny. That goes with the territory. Companies may employ thousands of people that may be hampered by the sheer size of their workforces and their bureaucracies. Or they could be like Odyssey, the radio company that's already starting to put layoffs to their workforce. Nothing new with that there. I was going to talk about the story, but I won't. Just make the point of saying it here, and we'll just finish up with Fred Jacobs for the night. So managers recognize skills, especially because an on-air personality may not always be the most self-aware. that you need to identify and unlock skills that don't always surface, creating avenues for growth. And this amounts to positions with more leadership responsibility or the ability to move within the company, not necessarily to a bigger market, but to an opportunity that showcases their skills and aspirations. In 2022, radio has a lot of understaffed operations, intensified by hard deadlines, aggressive goals, whether ratings or revenue. For a program director, this means that taking the step back and considering how to bring out the best in air staff, whether it's one or two people or an entire group, and also helping them develop those career portfolios. Many of the people in the air now never receive much direction in areas like social media, tech skills, video production, and podcast creation. All these things are within reach, but still far away from those making their living behind a mic. It's interesting. Radio, you have people that are kind of lost. When you're talking about 4 in 10 people see a future in radio for a long time, and the other ones, they feel like, their futures are dire. That's where radio is. 6 in 10 people in my fellow radio profession, my fellow radio brethren, that they're all caught up in this is a sad state of affairs. It's too bad. But these are some of the things that people have to worry about. It's unfortunate. We're going to keep this show at 40 minutes. I think that's all I got for tonight. Thanks for listening to the program. I hope you appreciate it. And we'll just keep an eye on some of the things that come up that'll be really interesting throughout all the media rags and stuff, and something else that'll get me all ramped up to talk for another hour plus, like I like to do for this program. But we'll leave it short for tonight. Thanks for listening to another Broadcasters Podcast. Until next week, remember that content is king, and the control of your content is in your hands.
Thank you for listening to the Broadcasters Podcast. Find all the links to subscribe to the show by going to broadcasterspodcast.com. And don't forget to check out the King of Podcasts wrestling program, the Wrestling is Real podcast, exclusively at wrestlingisreal.com.